installment of Old versus, and welcome to a new series I'm calling Old versus Remake. New series. For this series, I will be comparing two movies like I normally do. But then, here's where the new rules come into effect. I'll leave all my evidence for my comparisons out on the field. But then, you decide. And I think the first movie I should be comparing is Sleeping Beauty versus its kind of live-action remake, Maleficent. Now, I've been told on many occasions that this isn't a live-action remake, and Maleficent does its own thing. Not really. For the first half of this movie doesn't do its own thing. For the first half of this movie, sure, it does its own thing. But the second half, then once we reach the second half of Maleficent, we then enter live-action remake territory. We then sort of do enter some live-action remake territory. And I only mean... But this isn't a review. This is a versus match that can only sport. So as Nick Cannon always says on The Masked Singer, ding ding! It's time to SmackDown! Alright. Round one. Both of these... Let's start with round one. So, round one of this video will bunt an anti-hero. Yes, Maleficent is an anti-hero. Yes, Maleficent is an anti-hero in this. This was in a long line of Disney anti-hero movies, where Disney took anti-hero movies, where Disney took some of their iconic villains and made them anti-heroes, which I think is a good idea. This is way better than a live-action remake, which I was worried that this version of, which I was worried Maleficent would be. Another Disney live-action remake. But surprisingly, it isn't. Maleficent is a good anti-hero. She starts out this movie as a hero, but now this will be another round all to itself where I compare the princess, where I compare Aurora. Protagonist, Aurora doesn't do much. She sleeps for half of the movie. So basically, Aurora just gets her finger pricked and falls asleep. So sadly, gotta give it to Maleficent this round. Winner, Maleficent. Tackle the mistress of all evil. Which version of Maleficent is better? The 2014 version of the character or the original one? I'm gonna play favorites. I could play favorites, but that feels a little bit unfair. So instead of playing favorites, let's basically look at each version of Maleficent one by one, starting with the 2014 version. Since the 2014 version lost in the first round, since the 2014 version won, we'll look at the 2014 version, the 1959 version first. Maleficent is common evil through and through. She basically revels in the misery her curse has brought to a small kingdom. And she doesn't even care about it. Maleficent even brags about it in Descendants. Even though I'm not talking about that one, even though Descendants does have some connections with the 1959 movie, that's for another video. Here, we're just looking at Maleficent's character in the 1959 film. She's evil, but also has rage to her. She's like an over-tempered version of Darth Vader, but worse. She's a version of Kylo and loses everything to Stefan. Yeah, loses everything to Stefan. Yeah. They give her a weakness. Something that makes her less overpowered than she is in the original. Maleficent's weakness is iron. Basically, anything made out of metal she can't touch without it burning red and hurting her. Which leads into Stefan's role in the sequel as the first movie's antagonist. But the antagonist role, for now on the Maleficent side, for now, who wins this round? Well, we're tied up. Because sadly for a more down-to-earth version of Maleficent, point new. Alright, we're all tied up, and now it's time to start a new round. Bringing back down the microphone, because it's time for the doubles round. Rules are simple. That doubles round out on top in this. So does that mean we'll have a tie? No. With all that said, all points are now worth 2. So that means this can get anyone up to 3 points or 5 if they're lucky. They are 5 if they're lucky. So with all that being said, she's Disney's third princess. So which version of Aurora is better? Well, let's dive in to find out. This is Best Aurora. Now, the 2014 Maleficent movie doesn't tackle her as much. She's not the main protagonist in the first movie or in the sequel. But the sequel is a topic for another day. Aurora's role in the first Maleficent is very enjoyable. I do like Dakota Fanning's role as Aurora in this. I think it's perfect. But I'll get to the good fairies in a bit. For now, let's just continue on to who I don't like. We get to see some of Aurora's childhood and teen years until she fully grows up into an adult. In the original movie, we just see Aurora as a teenager. We see Aurora just as a teenager from the start. Only in the narrator's opening do we see her as a baby. Now, there is a Sleeping Beauty comic that actually shows Aurora's younger years. Now, there is a Sleeping Beauty comic that shows Aurora's younger years with the 3 good fairies. But that's only for like one comic section, and then we just move on to the main comic. Even though I want to give it to Maleficent on this round, Should I or should I not play favorites? Maleficent gets one more point. Maleficent is now up to 3. Point to the new. Listener Stefan, which one is better? This is best villain. Surprisingly, I had a problem deciding. Maleficent's role as the villain in Sleeping Beauty was great. She had her own conniving plan. Her plan was to get rid of Prince Philip out of the way so she wouldn't have to worry about True Love's kiss swooping in and saving the day. Maleficent was scared of losing her one way to make Stefan pay for uninviting her or denying her love. You see, in the villain's lair, we learned an interesting backstory for Maleficent. In the villain's lair, we learned that Maleficent in a play. Stefan doesn't kill her. He takes her wings and leaves her alive, possibly as a sign of their former doesn't hit as much. So sadly for the better villains, point to the old. That means the last round of this round will decide the winner for me, but not for you in the comments or the chat. Because remember, this SmackDown is maybe decided by me, but you can have your own voice in the chat or comments of who should win. Changed in the movie. They are not in the movie, they are not Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Their names are changed to other names. I forgot the names of what they're changed to, but Maleficent's fairies have different names. Now, for me, these fairies seemed like siblings to me, not 3 fairies. They seem like siblings to me, with Flora being the first oldest, Fauna the second, and Merryweather the youngest. So these fairies didn't seem like 3 separate entities. They bicker, they argue. They're not friends. They're family. As Gamora says in Guardians of the Galaxy, as Nebula says, you just fight and argue. You're not friends. And Gamora said, no, family. This is my favorite scene of the movie. This is my fear of Maleficent in both movies. Now in Maleficent, they're friends with her in the beginning until they grow scared of her. Once Maleficent loses her wings, then they're afraid of her. But the fairies seem to be afraid of Maleficent either way in the original. Even though they say that Maleficent was on their side before she turned to evil. Now these 3 aren't very capable of taking care of a baby because they never once did the human thing before. Which brings me to the 3 good fairies in the 2014 film. Luckily Diavon was there. If he wasn't and Maleficent found her, oh boy, would that be trouble. But I think Maleficent sent her on ahead as a scout. To follow the fairies out of the kingdom and out of the moors into a new area of the So sadly, who wins this round? Well, sadly, it's point to the old. Sadly, the old wins this round. The fairies seem more tightly knit than family in this. They don't seem like friends. Because that's what Maleficent describes them as. I'll see you guys. Now, I put my foot down and said that Sleeping Beauty won. But what are your thoughts? Did Sleeping Beauty deserve the win? Did Sleeping Beauty deserve it? Or could Maleficent win it? Let me know in the comments or let me know in the comments below. See you guys later.